controversial is a word that came to mind. Maybe a little bit more controversial than our typical weekly broadcast, but no less truthful and no less important. Because I mean, we're living in a world of psyops and layers of games within games and shell games, all with a very thick dint of occultism, of sulfur. And who better to shed light on the multifaceted dimensions of this thing? Let me just hit mute. There's somebody going. Who better to shed light on the multidimensional aspect of this thing than William Ramsey, who I think everybody here knows. William Ramsey Investigates is a fantastic channel. His in the books that he's produced on Aleister Crowley, 9/11, deep occultism, and how that interfaces with intelligence agencies, MK Ultra techniques of mass manipulation are fantastic, well researched, very scholarly, and um, and I'm just so happy that William said yes when I asked him, "Hey, you want to give a presentation with everything going on right now?" With the Kabuki Theater around the Tyler Robinson hearings, the MK Ultra, the why now? Why now to bring up all of these MK Ultra disclosures at this very moment, particularly is a big question. Who are the players who are influencing this? What's going on? And then also, how do the stories that we've been told, the entertainment that we've been fed, shape multiple generations of the collective imagination, the collective dream, such that we can possibly become more pliable, more adaptive to unhealthy, unnatural situations? So, thank you, William, for doing this. The stage, it's all yours. And after you're done your formal remarks, your main presentation, however you want to go about it, we're going to open up for a little bit of a dialogue with the audience. Some people think about questions while William's going at it. And it's all yours, man. Thanks.
Matt, thanks for the invite. Great to be here. Great to be with you. I really appreciate Love your work as well. Great books, and we've interviewed you. I see some familiar faces there. Bruce Torres. Hey, Bruce, how are you? Talked to you a couple times in the past. Hope all is well. Great to be here. So much of our culture has been influenced by secret ideas or esoteric ideas or occult ideas. And a lot of times we're passive viewers of these things, whether we're sitting in a theater. And then with the advent of technology and the internet and streaming, it's a lot easier to kind of take these apart with a lot of it's easier to research. We used to have to go to libraries and get magazines and take them out or go through the folder cards if you're old enough to remember that. So a lot of the stuff that we've been exposed to, we can now analyze. And so I've done a lot of my work is the stuff that I grew up with, a lot of these films that I saw maybe the first time and like, what is going on here? So I've done a lot, and Matt kind of titled this kind of Occult Hollywood. I've done a documentary called Occult Hollywood. My first one was in 2010. It's available on my Patreon. Amazon won't let me repost it. I should try again, but I redid it recently, and I covered some of those movies. So I've had an interest in that as somebody who's gotten older and can kind of has read Crowley, and it kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of these symbols. They're talking in symbols. It's kind of like a famous statement going back to the 19th century. I think it was either Manly P. Hall or something like symbology is very important. I can't remember the term offhand verbatim what he said. But so I've done a lot of these shows. What we were going to talk about was kind of like this occult crime that led to True Detective, which I think is really it's an 8-part series that was released in 2014 featuring Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. I think it's really an insight into cult investigations because it's about an occult crime. It starts off with an occult crime where there's a young girl with this very well-known kind of pedophilia symbol, and she's got horns on. And a lot of people watch that with great interest. And in my kind of parapolitical world or research world, it's very well respected, that True Detective. It's referenced in a lot of memes, but a lot of people don't know that it was based on a real case. It was called the Hosanna Church case. It's super dark. And I can go into it in detail. I do have a presentation about that. But that's just one of the things that I've done. I've also looked into Eyes Wide Shut, I've done a 4-hour presentation on Eyes Wide Shut, Rosemary's Baby, Manchurian Candidate, which I think is really important, Fight Club, and the other one is Ninth Gate. It's the film by Johnny Depp, which is super dark. And it actually ends with because I've read Crowley, I know what they were doing. It's a marriage of the beast and the Scarlet Woman and the Beast. It finishes off with a Crowley ritual. You'd have to read Crowley to know it or be either familiar with Crowley or be initiated into the OTO to understand what they were portraying because they don't state it right away. But basically the Corso, the Depp character enters the ninth gate. He's actually the really evil one, not the Boris Balkan guy who hires him, which is, you can break down these names too. You see the 11s everywhere that are over in Ninth Gate Fight Club, things like that. But that's an overview of my work. And we can go, I'm happy to go anywhere really specific. We can go into the background of the True Detective, if people know that, or we can go into the Manchurian Candidate. I do have a
I
presentation.
think, yeah, I think William, the entry point of the Manchurian Candidate might be the most lawful thing based upon what's going on right now
Great.
politically in Congress with various here MK Ultra victims, or the people who smell like they're MK Ultra victims as far as patsies are concerned. So yeah, let's start with that.
This is where it kind of all starts. Richard Condon was in Hollywood. He started writing books and he wrote The Manchurian Candidate in, I think it was released in 1959. And I've written a two-part series and I've done presentations on this. This one's good, I think, for this situation that we're in here, this stream, because there's a lot of visuals. I included a lot of pictures. But one of the things, like one of the interesting things about the original Manchurian Candidate, which literally was released before JFK, Matt and I were talking about Frankenheimer and also 7 Days in May, which was literally prescient about the assassination about Kennedy, and was Kennedy literally let Frankenheimer film in the White House. So you'll see the car drive up to one of the sides of the White House back then. Frankenheimer was a very important figure and was important in this whole thing. But what's interesting about Condon's book, he's kind of he's fallen out of favor or fashion. He's a great writer. The book is really, really good. And the main character actually kind of ties into Trump because he based the main character on Roy Cohn, of all people, Trump's mentor. But a lot of people don't know and may not be aware that the Manchurian Candidate, the film, had an involvement of a CIA MKL doctor, and his name was Dr. William Joseph Bryan. And some people know his name. He's not as well known as like Jolly West or Ewan Cameron, but he's in the background of so many stories. Actually, in the background of a Manson case, he actually represented, I think it was Kasabian's family, which a lot of people don't know. Brian was close friends with uh, is the lawyer for Patty Hearst. So he's around this guy, whose name I can't remember right now. But he's in the background of the Manchurian Candidate, and apparently, according to rumor, is friends with Sinatra. But this film itself, Manchurian Candidate, was the book was a favorite of Kennedy, and Sinatra was close friends with Kennedy before falling out. Sinatra was a big proponent and supporter of Kennedy, and when Kennedy won, Sinatra was tasked with actually putting together his party, like his inaugural party. A lot of people don't know that. So after the inauguration, Sinatra was at Hyannisport, and they literally were talking about the book. And Kennedy says to Sinatra, "Frank, I love the book. Go make it." And so he actually kind of, with I think with the power of the presidency and his reputation, Kennedy really was involved in the creation of this film about mind control. And this is really where it all started off too. This is kind of, there aren't before 1955 or 1960, there aren't these strange kind of assassins or patsies around. There's not that history. There are assassins, but they don't seem to be handled as much. But with the advent of Oswald, and then after that, James Earl Ray, Sirhan is really an obvious guy who's came out of some kind of operation. Uh, Although Chapman, all the way up until the present, there's so many suspicious things around Trump that it's really important to look at the Manchurian Candidate and looking at from fiction to fact, because some of the stuff inside this Manchurian Candidate is based on actual factual kind of analysis. It's really something else. But Kennedy knew a guy, I can't remember his name, but he was Kennedy's brother-in-law, Peter Lawford, was close to Sinatra, so they were close. And then Sammy Davis Jr., kind of a known Church of Satan member, or yeah, I think it was Satanic Church. He said Frank's got the White House on speed dial, so Sinatra really knew him. I talk here about the inaugural ball and then how it started. So they got this guy, George Axelrod, was hired to write the screenplay. And then Sinatra's own production company was involved in owning it. It was called Essex Productions. And then he insisted that Frankenheimer would direct, and Angela Lansbury, that's the character that's based on Roy Cohn, would be the center role. Her name was Eleanor Islin. And this was, I'm going to ruin the whole film for you if you haven't seen it in a while, but I think it's really a great film. It's really one of the best films American films made. And what's odd about the film is that after the assassination of Kennedy in November 22nd, 1963, it was very infrequently seen. People used to say it was gone for 25 years, and it was pretty much gone. Like there would be individual showing somewhere, but this, you have to remember this is before streaming or VHS. So the film kind of was shown and disappeared in a way. Um, and some of the actors have passed away. Unfortunately, Lawrence Harvey didn't live very long, but it had Frank Sinatra, Lawrence Harvey, Angela Lansbury. Janet Leigh had just come off of Psycho, so she was famous. That's Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, if you remember. Henry Silva was around. He kind of played a Korean guy, and but it's just an incredible film because of what really happened. If you remember the time when they were writing, that's the reason the word or the phrase entered into common parlance of the Manchurian Candidate is that this is after the Korean War, right? So the Korean War was 1950 to 1953. The whole peninsula was bombed to smithereens. Like it literally was like there wasn't a tall building in the entire Korean peninsula. May not be an over exaggeration, but during that time they were looking into this whole thing about like what are the Eastern Bloc doing or what are the communists doing about these people? Because what happened is Manchuria, so above Korea is that place called Manchuria. What was happening is a lot of the bombers would come back or be captured, and they had gone through some kind of behavioral control or behavioral change, and they would confess something or confess their sin. So there was this issue and interest about how these ex-military guys were being manipulated to like renounce the government or something like that. So that's how the kind of Manchurian Candidate kind of entered into the thing. But this whole film is a representation of what hypnosis and hypnotists are able to do. And like I said, William Joseph Bryan is there in the background. He's never credited um, in the Manchurian Candidate, but he actually, believe it or not, was friends with Francis Ford Coppola and worked on one of Francis Ford Coppola's, I think it was Francis Ford Coppola's first film, which was a kind of a sci-fi film that was filmed in Ireland. One of the important things about the Manchurian Candidate is that it has a kind of a controlling motif of this queen of diamonds. And it's a central kind of component of the whole film is this deck of cards. And they're trying to figure out what happened. And this is the guy, Raymond Shaw. And there is actually kind of strange numerology in here. They mentioned 77, which is really one of Crowley's power numbers. So I noted that here. Like there was only 77 men made with this Medal of Honor. So he's kind of being fashioned as a Manchurian Candidate, this guy, even before he kind of entered into uh, our known nomenclature, our known kind of terminology. It is interesting. But here he is with his Medal of Honor. They're listing it. He's being decorated by the president. So he's a very famous person. One of the really clever and uh, interesting aspects of this film is how they go back and through dreams, this guy, Bennett Marco, who is Sinatra, keeps having this recurring nightmare. And that is this great scene. I think it's really one of the more clever scenes I've ever seen of these 11 men from their platoon going through this kind of they've been hypnotized, they've been conditioned, and it's a 12-minute mark. I write this one of the most remarkable sequences ever filmed in cinematic history. So you got to see it because the way he did the pans. My understanding is that Frankenheimer came out of TV, so he was used to filming live TV, and so in that environment, you move the camera around often and you pan often, and there's a lot of movement, and I think that's reflected in this scene. But what it is, it's like they keep switching out. So the audience looks like military guys, and then they're also old ladies at a conference about plants, they're talking about hydrangeas. And this is the central figure, this Dr. Yen Lo. Well, what's interesting about this is that this guy's literally quoting actual academic papers that are real. And it comes from the book. It's actually from the book. There are direct statements from the book by Condon in this film. So they didn't even change any of the dialogue at all. It's literally right out, cut and pasted right out of Condon's book. And one of the interesting things is according to this, he is making these soldiers smoke yak dung, yak manure, thinking it's tobacco. And that's one of the examples he's showing. And I'll show a video here of Manson. Oh, well, it's actually not Manson, but it's about Danny Trejo, and he got hypnotized by Charles Manson, right? So Charles Manson knew hypnotism, and I'll prove that to you right here in this lecture. But we'll get to that. I got some good video here after I do my presentation. So he goes, comrades, I print to you the famous Raymond Shaw, young man, you've flown 8,000 miles to this dreary spot in Manchuria. So they're in Manchuria, north of Korea, and he's been selected. But a lot of these interesting things is that these academic papers are real. So experiments in the hypnotic production of antisocial and self-injurious behavior, which is listed. And then there's another one, experiments in hypnotic production of crime, conditioned reflex. And it shows, I think it's reflects the academic heft of people who are literally studying this stuff. So, like, you have Pavlov, who's like one of the greats, everybody knows his name, and the conditioned response, right? The salivating dog and all this stuff. But this is what was happening around that time in the 50s, is really this kind of. So, MK Ultra, which ostensibly started in 53, or formally started, I guess, in 53, after Alan Dulles gave his infamous brain warfare speech in Virginia, literally 2 weeks after MK Ultra starts, and it gets funded. But there's this background of this academic writing that's exemplified in this film, Manchurian Candidate. So it's like somebody literally researched this and found it, found these actual real things. So if you watch the sequence, you'll see that these like military guys become women. She's holding a bayonet. There's real issues about whether you can have and it's a real thing. Can you get somebody to engage in antisocial behavior who's hypnotized? And a lot of people have said no, you cannot. But there are techniques you can use to do post hypnotic programming. One of the interesting things about Oswald, he was surrounded by a guy who knew hypnotism. His name was David Ferry. If you're familiar with the the JFK assassination kind of lore, Ferry is a very important character who ostensibly was in this kind of weird Christian offshoot organization with William Joseph Bryan, who's involved in this film, guys. So like there are very secretive, and literally during the trial of Ruby, with the involvement of Melvin Belli, who's close personal friends with William Joseph Bryan. I'll bring up my Joseph Bryan information here in a sec. But Bryan is in the stands, and he was a specialist in jury selection. So he used his psychological skills in jury selection. And there's an arguable tie between William Joseph Bryan, not William Jennings Bryan. So that's the kind of famous cross of gold or cross of silver politician, but the William Joseph Bryan connection to Sirhan Sirhan. So it kind of goes into this theme of this programmed patsy, not programmed assassin. So there's exemplified by this violence that takes place. Raymond Shaw strangles Mavoli, and then Sinatra wakes up. He's from his so-called dream. He's actually remembering it. They've been programmed to say Shaw is the nicest person. So they repeat this phrase over and over. Raymond Shaw is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life. And in the film, he's really unpleasant. Raymond Shaw is kind of a spoiled brat. He also shoots somebody. This guy, who's an African American guy, says the same thing about Raymond Shaw later on. He has the same dreams. So you see these kind of same things. Let's go. Let me go to part two. So let's see. Later on in the film, that there is this whole idea of triggering people, and actually, this is consistent with a test the CIA did before MK Ultra, is whether they could trigger somebody through a phone call, somebody who had been pre-programmed. And they figured out with the right test subject they could. They didn't do it to everybody. A lot of hypnosis is there's like a hypnotic scale, and you have to have the right subject, somebody who can dissociate. And they literally, that's why it's called traumatic mind control, trauma-based mind control, is because you traumatize the brain, then it splits to avoid pain, and that person dissociates. And if they get the right subject, they can really do incredible stuff, guys. Like I've done shows about people talk about you and Cameron or Jolly West, but there are two other guys that people need to study, and that is George Hoban Esterbrooks and Erickson. I can't remember his first name, but these guys were actually looking into this hypnotic stuff in the 30s. And there's really interesting connect, and it actually ties back to Roy Cohn in a weird way. But these guys were giving presentations all over DC. They were from like Colgate or upstate New York, giving presentations in DC for luminaries in the like admirals, and also J. Edgar Hoover, who supposedly was blackmailed by Roy Cohn. Like I haven't verified that. Anyway, so solitaire is the key thing. It's this element. One of the interesting things is they put him in a hypnotic state in the safe house in New York City, and there's strange overlaps here between this film and Catcher in the Rye, where Chapman, for people who don't know, Chapman carried around this book Catcher in the Rye all the time, and he kind of carried it like a Bible. He even carried it into court. It was a real promotion. And Catcher in the Rye should be seen almost like Manchurian Candidate, because it goes into all these weird states, and the main character is a mess. He is a complete mess, and also has all the elements of somebody who's kind of like has split brain, really. What's his name? I can't remember his name. We'll see the overlap here, because a lot of
Holden
Holden
Caulfield.
Caulfield. Yeah, thanks, Holden Caulfield. The part of this film takes place in Central Park, and the ending of Catcher in the Rye pretty much ends in Central Park at the merry-go-round, which is another simple kind of a mind control motif, because to torture some of these people, they literally would put them in a spinning thing and spin it real fast, and they would kind of discombobulate their sensory perception, which is a key element of these kind of investigations, you and Cameron. Sensory deprivation and misperception, things like that. Anyway, Yun Lo, but he's explaining it all. This is like one of the more important things about what you can do to the proper subject. And this is reflected in real life. So my presentation that I've done, I did like 10 parts of it, which is the Manchurian Candidate from fiction to fact. This is actually factual. So Dr. Lowe explains this to his associate. Do you realize, comrade, the implications of the weapon? So he's calling these people weapons. It's very important to understand, because some of these people, even today, are clearly kind of weapons. They are a form of conflict. And certainly Sirhan Sirhan, who was a key component of political change when RFK died, and especially JFK too. Oswald, like I can make the case Oswald was in this program, maybe not super sophisticated, but he was at Atsugi Air Force Base, and that was a military base that was doing the U-2 flyovers, and they were doing MK Ultra. They were doing LSD experiments there. And so he tried to kill himself. There were all kinds of things about Oswald that were super suspicious. But going back here, do you realize, comrade, the implications of the weapon that has been placed at your disposal? A normally conditioned American who has been trained to kill and then have no memory. So this is consistent or synonymous with amnesia. So this is what happens. So like you can ask people like Chapman, he doesn't remember certain things. If you said that, like, oh, Chapman, were you at the Dakota? He's like, well, you said I was. Like some of these guys don't remember certain things. It's absolutely incredible. This is these are tells actually when they have amnesia like that and can't remember certain things. That's like where you get your pen and piece of paper and you check the box. Like, whoa, this guy could have been somebody tampered with this guy. A normally conditioned American has been trained to kill and then have no memory of having killed. Without memory of his deed, he cannot possibly feel guilt, nor have any reason to fear being caught. Now, when Chapman supposedly shot Lennon, he took out Catcher in the Rye and sat down on the corner of Dakota like nothing happened, like he waited there. And this is also kind of a common theme of some of these other guys. They just don't even go away. I think it was the Aurora shooter did the same thing, like bloody killing in a movie theater and then sat down in a car. Like really strange. Um, then, having been relieved of those uniquely American symptoms, guilt and fear, he cannot possibly give himself away. Raymond will remain an outwardly normal, productive, sober, and respected member of the community, or should I say, if properly used, entirely police proof. His brain has not only been washed, as they say, it has been dry cleaned. Ha ha ha. So it's kind of interesting they said that. They also exemplify in this film. They show Condon is clever enough to show neuro linguistic programming. And like a little phrase in this. It's never explicitly stated in the film or the book, but this guy, Eleanor Island, is the brain. She's like depicted as one of the most evil people depicted in, and she's Angela Lansbury's awesome. She's literally depicted as like one of the great villains of all movie history, but she's kind of handling this Senator Island, who's kind of modeled on McCarthy's anti-communist, but he can't remember how many communists there are, and so she does this little trick on him. It's like, oh, it's 57, and that's what he's doing with this Heinz 57 tomato sauce, which he's like pouring over his food, and that is a technique of memorization, is to try to find something somebody has and then implant that in their brain so that they remember it. So you see that's kind of, NLP can be seen. Hypnosis is kind of like history, like a term like history. It has so many subparts and sub groups and different styles. It's a very complex subject. A lot of people may not know, but once you get into it, you realize there are tons of very smart academic people who've done encyclopedias of work on this. And then it goes on. Marco Bennett is remembering some of these people's faces. He's talking to Raymond Shaw. They mention Orestes and Clytemnestra, so this is a kind of a nod to the classics, and that's foreshadowing that Raymond Shaw is going to kill his mom, which is interesting. This is the interesting part that kind of ties into Catcher in the Rye, is Central Park. At a certain point, there is a trigger of the card at a bar, and he sees the card. Somebody suggests he hears in the background, go take a walk and jump in the river. And according to this card, this is a suggestible moment for Shaw, and he runs off and jumps in the river in the center of Central Park. So that's it. There's also this African American guy here in the center plays an Army intel agent, and he's working with Marco Bennett to try to figure out what the heck is going on. And they find a way that the Queen of Diamonds is reminiscent of many ways of Raymond's dearly loved and hated mother, and is the second key to clear the mechanism for any other assignment. So this card becomes this trigger mechanism, and then she's playing the Queen of Diamonds. So they have this kind of morphing symbolism in this, which is really interesting. And there's also a lot of like pictures of Lincoln, so it's reminiscent of assassinations and symbolic stuff. There's a competing love interest. His mom, in the book, it's very graphic. They have a incestual relationship. In the film, it's kind of suggested, but in the book, it's there. It's really bad. But anyway, Raymond Shaw's love interest is this girl. She comes up with the Queen of Diamonds. They escape. And then Eleanor Island's freaked out, like, where did she go? And then Bennett kind of forces him. He's going to rip out all the wiring by giving him the Queen of Diamonds. But it doesn't really work. Shaw gets captured again. He becomes an assassin. He kills his girlfriend, another senator, Jordan, and Jocelyn, on top of a black and white checkerboard, which is very Masonic, which is very strange. And then it keeps going, and all this being said, and there's triggers, and then he's going to be dressed as a priest. It's kind of interesting too, because that's what Ferry and William Joseph Bryan would do. They would dress up as like priests and do all kinds of like dangerous stuff. And it's reminiscent of the assassins in Godfather 3, who also dressed as priests. So there you have his mother over the top, and they have this whole thing about how it's all going to work out. She's using him to facilitate this assassination that's going to bring her husband into the presidency. And it's kind of strange. It kind of ties into, in an odd way, to the Charlie Kirk assassination because of the microphone emphasis on Kirk. Kirk had that microphone too. But Johnny will rise gallantly to his feet and lift Ben Arthur's body in his arms and stand in front of the microphones and begin to speak. The speech is short, but the most rousing speech I've ever read. It's been worked on here and in Russia for over 8 years. I shall force someone to take the body away from him. And Johnny will relieve these microphones and those cameras, all blood all over him, fighting off anyone who tries, defending America, even at its own death, rallying a nation of television viewers into hysteria to sweep us up into the White House with powers that will make martial law seem like anarchy. And it also is the Trump assassination in Butler. Like, it's so weird. Like, oh, he almost got killed. Now he's going to be our hero and get into the White House. So it's weird how this film that was made in 1963 reflects those themes. But it's all her. They paid me back by taking your soul away from you. I told them to build me an assassin. I wanted to kill her from a world filled with killers. And they chose you because they thought it would bind me closer to them. Now we've come to the end. This is where she kisses her son. In the book, it's much more graphic. There he is as the priest, Raymond Shaw. And it ends kind of, this is different. It's different than the book, but he basically ends with Sinatra saying, what happened? Made to commit acts too unspeakable to be decided here by an enemy who had captured his mind and soul. He freed himself at last in the end because Shaw kills himself. Heroically and unhesitatingly gave his life to save his country. Raymond Shaw, hell, hell. So really well worth your time. Really incredible film. But I have some interesting stuff. I have an interesting video you guys can watch if I can get the audio to play. But it's a conversation between Frankenheimer and the writer and Sinatra. And it's really something else because Frankenheimer's involved in this film, involved with let me see if I can get this to play, get the audio to play. But it's also, Frankenheimer's right there, literally at the RFK assassination. And Frankenheimer is in the this is actually in a book by Ed Sanders is his name, but he's in the Ambassador Hotel when RFK gets shot, and he remembers Sirhan walking by him, and he asks somebody later, could this have been what I was talking about, the Manchurian Candidate? How eerie is that? So he literally like wrote a movie, and then this whole event happened. So let me do this. Share sound.
Than 20 pages.
Can you guys hear the sound on this?
Absolutely psychic. I had 20 pages. Okay. So I had absolute panic. I finally got my stuff together. I had all the stuff laying. I had never put it together. I was frightened. Yeah. Over the weekend, I got you 80 pages and sent it. I would never have pushed the thing over and got the first 80 had you not suddenly given it a little push. And the second thing I recall was, you remember the monster time we had shooting? You remember Johnny shooting 6 or 7 days shooting the dream sequence?
Oh, yeah.
You remember?
Oh, yes,
what a nightmare shooting that thing
yeah.
was. You had to shoot it from every different angle.
That's correct.
And
With every different combination.
And Frank finished in the picture, if you recall, and he was going to leave. So we just said, let's cut it together, just quick, just make a quick rough cut for Frank. And we did that afternoon, showed it, and we never changed it.
No, we never did.
Yeah, I was earlier this afternoon. I was remembering and discussing the your marvelous invention, changing the ladies of the Garden of New Jersey into the communist Chinese and Russians, and that knocked me out.
Marvelous outlet for his aggressions. May I have the bayonet, please?
Not with the knife, with the hands.
With the hands? Here, have him use this.
United Artists said we're scared to make this thing because it is so, they said, so anti-Russian, which it wasn't. And it wasn't, of course, but they said, and if President Kennedy, a year from now when this picture is released, if Kennedy is just about to have some sort of a rapport with the Russians, it's going to embarrass them. And you said, I was just come down from Hyannisport, and I saw the president, and the president said, what are you going to do next? And I said, the Manchurian candidate. And he said, great, who's going to play the mother? Well, that sort of ended that argument, if you remember.
So that kind of confirms that the genesis of the film happened at JFK's compound, Hyannisport, right?
He was really interested, though, in the facts of the project itself.
The fact that people have read all kinds of connotations into this thing is funny, because we set out to do Dick Condon's book. That's what we did.
Right.
We did all sorts of strange things, but we did them so automatically. I mean, it's rather strange that Angela Lansbury was 1 year older than Larry Harvey and played his mother. And nobody questioned it for a second.
She was superb.
She was just wonderful.
Absolutely marvelous in the picture. And she was sinister. She really
God,
was. Boy,
terrifying.
She was a heavy.
But now we have come almost to the end. One last step. And then when I take power, they will be pulled down and ground into dirt for what they did to you. And what they did in so contemptuously underestimating me.
In the book, there's quite a big thing about the incestuous relationship between the mother and son. But somehow, the way she played it at the very end, she implied it very subtly and very effectively, I thought.
She kissed him straight on the lips, and then she put a period to the whole idea, whether is she or isn't she, is the whole point.
And Frank, I think another thing, too, that might be interesting to talk about, which is the fact that in those days, when we made that picture, we weren't able to do all the graphic violence that they do today. I think it made it a better movie.
And we had the first karate fight that anybody ever had.
That's the first one.
First one, yeah.
With Henry Silva. The sequence where I walked up to the door, looking for Larry, and Henry Silva opened the door, there was a moment where he knocked me down, and I said to him, kick at my face with your left foot. The scene started, and he came at me, and he kicked with the other foot. I want to tell you something. I never moved so fast in my whole life. I just shoved everything over to one side like that, and he caught it in the fist. I broke my finger in that thing. See that?
War wound. Is that your wound from the Manchurian candidate?
Yeah, that's my war wound. When I went for his head and hit the table, and broke the table.
Right.
It was a solid table, and they cut into it. And there was a movement where I hit him, and he fell against the table. When the rehearsal, I said, that's the right position. Either he didn't hear well, or he didn't know left or right. It's a good thing it was rehearsal. But he moved into the area where I was going to bring my hand down. But when we talked, and either one of you said, what role would you like to play? And I said, I'd like to play the Marco, the guy in the service, the soldier. Because I knew that the slightly tougher role was the role that I wanted to play. I wouldn't have known how to play the thing that Larry did.
Well, as it turns out, it was sure the right choice.
Right choice.
That symbol was a grabber, the Queen of Diamonds.
Absolutely.
And he played off it so well. When he said, how about a little solitaire? Well, his eyes kind of got almost crossed, you know?
Why don't you pass the time by playing a little solitaire?
Larry was a fine actor. He was a marvelous actor.
Wonderful.
Yes, he was.
Good actor. He left us too soon, I must say. I go back and think about things we did, little moments that we did. And I remember the wonderful enthusiasm on the part of everybody involved in the film. And I mean it sincerely. I'm talking about grips, the assistant cameraman, the cameraman. Everybody was excited about doing the picture, which made, I think, was 30 to 40% of the enthusiasm came from those people, and it helped. It really did help. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience of my life. It really was.
Really interesting. There's another thing I want to show you guys. This is one of the scholars kind of hypnotism. I forgot the name of his book. I think it's Trance on Trial was his book. His name is Shefflin. He wrote a lot of stuff, but this is something that was done in Operation Artichoke to trigger these things, which you just saw depicted in the Manchurian Candidate. But basically, this is from his book, and this is Mind Control and Telephone, how they can do it. It was clear then by the summer of 1954 that the Artichoke team said we can create an artificial personality, program that personality to conduct an assassination. That assassination would occur. In fact, the individual was captured. He would never reveal the knowledge. This is going through what Yen Lo said in that film. He would never reveal the knowledge that had been engaged in the assassination. The host would know nothing about the altar. The amnesia would be impenetrable, and even under torture, the host would not reveal the secrets. The CIA research at many universities around the country explored topics such as programming people by way of telephone, whether somebody could answer a telephone. A secret word would be given. They would slip automatically into a trance. Nobody around them to know they were in a trance and wouldn't know they were in a trance, so forth. So they studied that. This is literally from him. It's Shefflin, Scheflin. This is so he's referencing Condon here. This is Richard Condon, who wrote the Manchurian Candidate, as Walter Bowett discovered when he wrote him. He had no idea he was writing fact, right? So that's the whole thing about people watching the Manchurian Candidate. They may be watching fictional stuff. It's actually based in fact. He thought the only cases come out of the literature suggest that someone may have been an experimental subject as Candy Jones. That's a whole another story. But I mean, this is a whole document I could go through, but it's about the history of mind control. He mentions the witchcraft. So you want to talk about the occult element. There's a lot of occultist and occult kind of principles in this. In the hearings on MK Ultra a couple weeks ago, I think, Kinzer wrote the book, The Poisoner in Chief, and literally Gottlieb thought of himself as an alchemist. He thought of himself as kind of doing alchemical type stuff because they were using poisons and things like that. And so it goes back to all the way back, and even Shefflin traces this. I mean, I can read this, but traces it back to the witch hunters, Malleus Maleficarum, Egyptians, mesmerism. I've done a show too on Rasputin, who could do this kind of magnetism, mesmerism. That was how powerful he was. He externally was a Christian monk, but he knew, and he's definitely initiated. He made hand gestures, Masonic hand gestures and stuff like that. But he knew how to kind of induce these trance-like states and manipulate people. That's how he got to the top. That's how he got close to the Romanovs, he was skilled at this. One of the elements that's often overlooked by, and this goes through the whole thing, often overlooked by researchers into the Manson family, and Manson is his capacity for hypnotism. And this is, hopefully you'll recognize this guy's face. His name is Danny Trejo. I don't know if he's ever had any really leading roles, but he kind of played a bit actor in the film Heat, which they're making Heat 2. Heat was featured Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, but he's doing an interview here, and it's really interesting. He's an older guy, so I don't know if he explains it real well, but basically what Manson would do in jail, they were in jail together, what Manson would do is induce the feeling euphoria of drugs without drugs. And that's what Trejo's trying to impart to this interview viewer, is that he would make them think they were doing heroin again without heroin. And then their faces would flush or something strange would happen. They would have some physiological response. So this is about 4 minutes.
So you met Charles Manson in prison, didn't you? What was that story? Can you tell us that?
County jail. In the county jail. But let me tell you, Charlie wasn't the guy that you saw on the TV specials. All right. He was he was like 5'4", 5'5", little scrawny. He was poor, kind of like a bum, really. He had a string for a belt. He tied his pants with a string because he couldn't afford a belt, and everybody else, we dressed cool, ironed our pants, and so some of the prisoners were going to take advantage of him because they take advantage of anybody that's small. And we found out that he could hypnotize you, so we let him sleep in front of our cell to make sure that nobody had hurt him, and he got us loaded on weed, and 3 of the guys in the cell. Everybody else had like 6 guys in their cell. We only had 3 because we were special. I had 2 killers with me, and then he got us loaded on weed, and I said, "Well, get us loaded on heroin." So the 3 of us tried to get loaded. He got 2 of us loaded on heroin. One guy just woke up, and afterwards I asked him, how come he couldn't do him? And he asked, "Did you ever get loaded on heroin?" He goes, "No." Well, your mind doesn't know how to work. Do you understand? Your mind doesn't know how to react. So if I tell you to do something while you're hypnotized and you haven't done it before, or you don't know how to do it, you'll just wake up. Then,
so that's important. So what he's saying is that through hypnotism, Manson was able to revivify or whatever in their minds the feeling of smoking marijuana or doing heroin. So it's really something else that it's a component of in the occultism of Manson that's often overlooked.
This Johnny Ronnie Cruz, he was like, "Well, what happened? He never got loaded," and boy, I was sorry when they transferred Charlie out.
You've basically got unlimited access to anything that you want because he can just keep on hypnotizing you back into it. What was he in for? Do you know why he was there?
Yeah, I have no idea. He was nothing of any, because he was a petty thief. He wasn't. You know what? And not to speak ill of the dead, but Charlie couldn't have done that any place, any time, but right there. And my friend George Perry knew him in Frisco, knew him in Oakland. Okay, and he was a scrawny little hippie, and the girls that he got, Linda Kasabian, all of them were broken. All of them. They were up in Oakland and San Francisco being ripped off by the pimps and raped by the pimps, and so.
He just mentioned Linda Kasabian. That was the one that worked with William Joseph Bryan, who was involved in the Manchurian Candidate. So I'm going to play this as kind of probably one of the more interesting clips from Manchurian Candidate.
Do you realize, comrade, the implications of the weapon that has been placed at your disposal? You may remove your head bandage, Raymond. Normally conditioned American who's been trained to kill and then to have no memory of having killed. Without memory of his deed, he cannot possibly feel guilt, nor will he, of course, have any reason to fear being caught. And having been relieved of those uniquely American symptoms, guilt and fear, he cannot possibly give himself away. Now Raymond will remain an outwardly normal, productive, sober, and respected member of the community. And I should say, if properly used, entirely police-proof. His brain has not only been washed, as they say, it has been dry cleaned.
So I read that sequence. That's an interesting one. Let me see if I can find a picture of William Joseph Bryan so people can know what he looks like. Who was a story in and of himself because of his involvement in so many stuff. He was involved in like investigations of My Lai, Jim Garrison trial, Manson family, like I mentioned, Kasabian, Sirhan. Also going back to Sam Shepard. If people remember the story of Sam Shepard, he supposedly killed his wife. He was involved in that. He also wrote the book Religious Aspects of Hypnosis. He was a preacher, William Joseph Bryan. He was one of the strangest people imaginable. He was because he was involved in this old Catholic church. So it's not the real Catholic church. It's not the authentic Catholic church. It's something different.
Is it the it's the Catholic Church, not the Orthodox.
Yeah,
The Catholic Church.
there's
Okay.
like these orders, like when guys get defrocked from the Catholic Church, if they really like feel bad, they will join these kind of non-authorized orders, and one is like the old Catholic Church, and it's not even like the real church. It's like there's a book called The Mad Bishops. Um, it's like this weird thing that these guys have. And it was connected to Bannister too. So like, it's just so strange. Bannister, if you remember, is the ex-FBI agent who literally like was handling Oswald supposedly. Trying to remember like what the names of these guys were, but they were around the JFK assassination. These strange orders. It was Earl Anglin James was the name of the guy. It was this kind of weird bishop. Here's American Orthodox Catholic Church, which isn't real. It's not real. That's what this guy was part of. And this is something to Jim Garrison. Let's see if I can get this. This is just an example. James Day. James Day was the guy who wrote the book about these bishops. But this, like at first glance, if you don't know this, you're like, oh, this is a Catholic church. This is not even an authorized, like Catholics would say this isn't real. But this guy's name is Archbishop Walter Profeta. And he's sending something to Jim Garrison. And he's like, we want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on the fine job you're doing and unmask the conspiracy against President Kennedy. But this is what William Joseph Bryan was involved in, is these kind of bishops, like Ferry. I've done shows on Ferry too, which is really here it is. So you just saw the hypnotism about Manson, and this is the article. I'll get a picture of William Joseph Bryan, but it was interesting because I'm leading this from what Danny Trejo said about Linda Kasabian. But this is a suspect in the Tate thing. This is from the Desert Sun, December 1969. And I'll read it if you can't see it. Linda Kasabian, 20, a suspect in the Sharon Tate murder case, has retained a hypnotist to look into the hypnotic and brainwashing aspect of the case. The hypnotist, Dr. William J. Bryan, Jr. of the American Institute of Technology, he had all these covers, almost like Scientology, where he had all these different names and stuff. He was like a Bond villain, like, oh, I work for the American Hypnotist Society. I work for the American Society of Hypnotists. I work for the Society of Hypnotists of America. Like all these different jumbled names or something. Anyway, said Mr. Kasabian's attorney had asked him to participate in the case. Bryan said at first glance the Tate murders may have involved brainwashing. Members of the communal cult implicated in the slayings have said their leader, Charles Manson, had an almost hypnotic power over his followers. Well, I bet he did. Bryan said he expected to interview Miss Kasabian. If you remember, the chief person who testified against Manson was Kasabian, one of the family members. I think the other family members didn't testify, but she was key to the prosecution. Bryan added that if there was evidence of brainwashing in her case, there would be no question of diminished responsibility. He referred to legal defense that made the defendant was not responsible for the crime. That was kind of what Yenlo was saying there. However, Bryan said three factors must be present for brainwashing to succeed: a long period of confinement with the brainwasher, the right suggestion which would appeal to the subject's personality, and a certain amount of physical abuse or torture to wear the person down. These are incredible admissions. Like it's literally in a document. But let me see if I can find a picture of Bryan. He's a huge guy. He was like over 300 pounds too. And this is from a book called The Chosen Ones, but it just validates that here is William Joseph Bryan, who's, like I keep repeating, is involved in the production of the Manchurian Candidate at Shaw's he was at Shaw's prosecution, right? Clay Shaw was the key figure, also a Knight of Malta, by the way. Clay Shaw was key figure in Garrison's prosecution. And this is from his book called The Chosen Ones from Bryan. Roger Jordan, a well-known New Orleans attorney, had managed to get me a seat in the crowded courtroom of the conspiracy trial of Clay Shaw. So this is first person. This is William Joseph Bryan saying that. Mr. Shaw, according to prosecutor Jim Garrison, had been a part, and Garrison's the key component of the movie JFK is played by Costner, right? Party of the conspiracy to assassinate President Kennedy. I met both Garrison and Irving F. Diamond, Shaw's lawyer. Garrison asked how the jury looked to me. Garrison knows William Joseph Bryan, and asked him specific questions about his knowledge base, which is about juries. Garrison asked how the jury looked to me, and Shaw introduced his lawyer.
Piece of MPL. There are another MPL for hearings going on right now. So like,
okay, I can hear. I don't know if you're talking to me, Matt. Anyway, the other thing that William Joseph Bryan worked on was a film called Dementia 13. So that was he was involved in this film. And this is actually a really interesting picture of Bryan because he is featured here with two pretty well-known actors, Basil Rathbone and Vincent Price. So if you're old enough to remember me, like old scare horror films from my childhood, Vincent Price was all over them. And so that guy in the center with the glasses is William Joseph Bryan. This is from the Austin Statesman 1961. So it's before Manchurian Candidate. But it gives you an idea. This guy's in the background of some films. That's really my point about this is another MK Ultra doctor that not a lot of people know about. But I'll read the subheader here. The real thing, this ominous-looking group, Basil Rathbone, Dr. William Joseph Bryan Jr., and Vincent Price Wright is engaged in bringing new realism to a Hollywood motion picture. Dr. Bryan is teaching Rathbone the techniques of hypnotism, which he will use on Price in the last segment of the case of Dr. Valdemar, an Edgar Allan Poe terror film. There you go. That's for Matt Ehret. And the film deals with the mesmerism, forerunner of modern hypnotism, and Rathbone will cast a real spell over Price. So they were involved in this other film. The other film that he was involved in is this. Oops, that's not the right one. Just shrink this back down. There we go. This is the film that he was involved in. I think this is Ford's first film, Francis Ford Coppola's first film. It's called Dementia 13. William Campbell, Luana Anders. I don't know if I've never seen this, but I guess it had some themes in this. Which one is the killer? It had some kind of, it's a horror film. Anyway, so he was also involved in Tales of Terror, William Joseph Bryan. He died mysteriously pretty young decided in a mob. I think it was the Sahara in Las Vegas. William Joseph Bryan was found in a hotel room at like 45 or something like that. Very, very young. Pretty young guy, generally. He was also involved in the Boston Stranglers, story that there's some real suspicions about the confession that was made, and it was under the auspices and the hypnotism of William Joseph Bryan. And the guy is Bailey was the attorney that was good friends with William Joseph Bryan. So it was F. Lee Bailey. He was also close to William Joseph Bryan was also close to Melvin Belli, who was Jack Ruby's attorney. For some reason, very strange that he was placed as Jack Ruby's attorney, because Belli was a civil lawyer. He didn't do any criminal stuff. That was like his first criminal trial. So it was pretty interesting. But anyway, so that's kind of like, I mean, I'm at the hour mark. That's kind of like my Manchurian. Well, I've done 10 hours on Manchurian Candidate. I could talk about the film all day because it's so important. But for people who don't know, Frankenheimer, who I showed there, he had he was close friends with Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski, and they were at his house when RFK was killed at the Ambassador, supposedly by Sirhan Sirhan. I don't believe Sirhan Sirhan did it, but they were, Sharon Tate and Polanski was at his house, and then Frankenheimer drove RFK to the ambassador where the assassination took place. So there's really incredible ties between this nexus point of all these assassinations that took place in the 60s, particularly JFK and RFK, Frankenheimer, Sinatra, and then Frankenheimer's connection to Polanski and Tate, and then the next year they would be killed by Manson, who I just showed was a hypnotist. He knew how to hypnotize. But I can go on. We can talk about. You want to talk about Oswald as an MK victim? We can do that,
dude. Everything you've said has been mind-blowing and fascinating. And I guess we could take maybe a momentary pause where I'd like to throw a question or two at you, and then maybe if you want, we could shift gears into Oswald for sure as as an MK Ultra victim. Sure, I'd be happy to. I guess one question I have, and we were briefly chatting on this, but I didn't get a chance to really hear your thoughts, is before we hit record, Frankenheimer is somebody who I've always respected and have seen as one of the fighters against the satanic infusion takeover of Hollywood. But there's these strange overlaps, as you pointed out. He was at Roman Polanski's house, and you've got these. Do you think that he was playing maybe on the darker side, or was he a good guy, or and he got freaked out, or how do you
I think he got freaked out. I think actually he got freaked out because he saw that he was at some kind of cultural nexus point, and apparently Frankenheimer had a really nice house in Malibu on the water, and when RFK was Paul, if you remember, he was trying to get the Democratic nomination, and so he would travel around California and go back. RFK would go back to Frankenheimer's house, and it was kind of like a little salon, so like he would always have these people around, politically active people. Actually, one of the other people who was involved in that salon was the guy who made Parallax View. What's the actor in Parallax View? I can't remember his name right now. But Warren Beatty. So Warren Beatty was part of this area of this thing, and then the assassination happens, and then Warren Beatty wants to make Parallax View, which is another really great mind control assassin film, which we can go into. But it kind of I don't know if it's deliberately aping or similar to Manchurian Candidate, but the theme is kind of the same as how to create an assassin and a mind control assassin. They're selected through these personality tests, and that's really what the Parallax View is. So this connection between kind of in my opinion, Polanski's a heavy duty occultist. Rosemary's Baby is really about the advent of Satan. And that's the whole twist of the birth of the Satanic Age. That's the subtext of Rosemary's Baby, which conforms to kind of like the rise of Satanism and LaVeyan Satanism in the 60s. And the Process Church, too, which is right in the background of the Manson family. But I do, to answer your question, once the assassination of RFK, it affected everybody around there. A lot of the left-wing type people in California were deeply affected. And one of them was Frankenheimer, who left the country. He went to France and went on this, I think he had a propensity to drink already, but he went on some kind of bender and like drank a lot, and his career was never the same. He was kind of brought in to fix certain films, but his real marks were already made. I don't know if he made as good of films as Manchurian Candidate or 7 Days of May, which is a great film too, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, his films suck after he disappears for like 10 years and then starts kind of making films a little bit, like the Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer, and they're just bizarre choices. So yeah, he's like a broken guy, it seems. But I'm happy that you went through that.
There's a really good book by Ed Sanders. Ed Sanders, it was he's actually close personal friends with Maury Terry, of all people, who wrote Ultimate Evil. They were close. They like riffed off each other, but they were willing to look into the kind of the occult underground. And one of the things that Ed Sanders did is wrote a book. It's kind of like a visual book. It's nice to read because there's so many drawings and stuff, but it includes these stories about Frankenheimer. And I'm trying to remember the name of it. But he also wrote probably the more important book about Manson family. It was called, it ended up being called, I think, The Family or the Dune Buggy Brigade. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, there's really interesting connections between all this stuff.
One more question for me, and then I'm going to open up for a few. We can do maybe like 6 minutes of questions, and then we'll jump into Lee Harvey Oswald. But I've got a question on Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
There's a lot of hypothesized conspiracy theorizing about, her death. What was she? What was she?
Well, I think that she was a product of the studio system, and I think that she had some surgery or whatever. I think she was kind of produced as an item, maybe like that's what Sharon Tate was going to become. But I think that she was involved in she had a very suspicious death during, I think, the JFK, connected to Sinatra too, which is really interesting because she was at the Cal Neva casino, which is up at Lake Tahoe, like a week before her death with Sinatra. And it seems like the rumors about Sinatra are not nice. They're not like his treatment of women. And so she might have been turned into some kind of she was clearly like a sex kitten or whatever when she sang that whole thing to JFK. If you remember, she like wore some dress that they literally stitched on. But I think that back then, if you were an adulterer, today, like the morals have totally changed. But back then, if you were an adulterer or something, it could ruin your political career. And I think she had relationships with JFK and RFK. And I've had guests on who really speculated that she met her demise because of that, because she had information about JFK and RFK who's had these ongoing political ambitions. So I think what indicates to me is that she was done away with. Gosh, I wish I could remember this Ed Sanders book.
That's okay. I would actually just throw one thing that I encountered. I only did a little bit of work on this, but one thing is that she did do something that RFK was helping her, and Judy Garland as well, and Sidney Poitier. They were all at the same time interfacing with RFK when he was Attorney General, and he was like taking an active interest in this network, and they were all trying to get out of their. They were kind of like the way the contract system worked back then, is you were owned by the studio, like your entire life was like you signed away if you got a deal with one of the studios, and you had very little control if you were an actor or an actress. And Marilyn Monroe was the first actress, it seems, to break away, create her own company, and like control her destiny in a sense. And that was RFK came in and helped her. And then Sidney Poitier was able to use her success to do the same thing. And a bunch of actors started doing that. I think it was MGM or maybe it was Universal. I forget which studio it was, but they were really pissed. So that was just one thing that I noticed that was often left out of the hypothesizing about what was causing her to, go off the reservation. But I wasn't sure if there was anything else.
They get those studios, if they think they own you, they get angry if you want to kind of get off your so-called contractual shackles. I mean, the stories are legion in Hollywood of that, of like people getting out of their contract, their producer contract, whether it's music or film studio. So, and they get nasty. People like, I think Bobby Fuller was one of them who was trying to get away in the 50s from his producer. And like, he was found in a car in Hollywood on fire or something, like really crazy. Like because the money's at stake. There's so much money at stake. So,
right. You want to jump into some Lee Harvey Oswald?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things about Harvey Oswald, he is strange. He is a really weird guy in a lot of ways. He's a Philly. There's a picture of him. I mentioned Ferry earlier. There's a picture of him with Lee Harvey Oswald. This is a weird picture too. I don't even know. This is actually a real picture, supposedly. But this is a picture of, this isn't the picture I was looking for. It's a picture of Oswald in the background, and there's John Wayne eating with a bunch of Marines in Corregidor. I don't know what the date is, but Oswald, if you start looking into Oswald and you want to talk about a guy who has tons of handlers, it's Oswald. There are people around him from his childhood in New York City at all times. He was actually had his personality assessed by a known MK Ultra doctor. And I'm trying to remember what his name is. Hubertus Strughold, I think was his name. He has a very memorable name, but he's overseen by so many people that it is so weird. And Ferry is one of them. And I'll try to find this picture of from like 1953. So very early in Oswald's like 15 years old. Like when he's dead, he's only 24. Like he's super young. Like a lot of these MK Ultra patsies are very young. Like I think Chapman's in his 20s. Sirhan's in his 20s. But Oswald's always seen as just kind of like this loner. He's not. He's got all kinds of people surrounding him. And this is Ferry was a notorious teen boy lover or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but he liked teen boys. And he was surrounded by him all the time. And CAP, which is Civilian Air Patrol, was this organization. It was kind of like almost like a Gladio organization. It was organized to like be a bulwark if we are ever taken over by the communists or something. And Ferry was he was a really great pilot. He's such a strange guy. Total alopecia, so he had to like wear wigs and put on eyebrows and stuff like that. But this is, you can see Oswald there. Let's see, like 14 or 15. And then there is David Ferry, both arguably involved or surrounding the U2 project, right? This thing. And there's arguments that Ferry was actually a U2 pilot. And what happens when you go that far up into the stratosphere or whatever, because of the pressure, your hair stops growing. So he may have had alopecia from these like crazy flights he was doing. Anyway, Oswald is surrounded by people his whole life. So he has Ferry who knew he knew this mind control stuff. So Ferry, and this is a really great book. This author is still around. His name is the man who knew too much. I can't remember his name right now, but this is just elements of like who Ferry was, who Oswald is around. This guy Ferry, and also Bannister, who's an ex-FBI guy. But this is from a book called The Man Who Knew Too Much. Man named David Ferry, who also worked as private investigator for Bannister. Ferry was a bizarre character indeed. He wore a red wig and false eyebrows. This is played by Joe Pesci in JFK film. Eyebrows to compensate for a rare ailment, alopecia, which left him bereft of all body hair. He founded his own church. So you see the similarity with William Joseph Bryan. Conducted experiments looking for cancer cure in a laboratory. Spoke out vehemently against Kennedy administration policies after the Bay of Pigs. When Ferry gave a speech on Cuba to the New Orleans chapter of the Military Order of World Wars, his attack was so vituperative that he was asked to leave the podium. We saw Ferry probably first encountered Oswald in 1955, so this is 8 years before the assassination, when Ferry commanded the Louisiana Civil Air Patrol, which the teenager took part. And it's very important to note that Barry Seal came out of CAP too, and Barry Seal was a notorious coke runner who ended up dead in Louisiana too, but part of the same state of where CAP was. This involved European arrangement where Oswald, summer of 1963, according to Delphine Roberts, that's the secretary for Bannister. On at least one occasion, Oswald and Ferry went together to Cuban exile training camp near New Orleans to take rifle practice. Ferry originally studied theology. He was a friend to Ray Gill, the lawyer for Carlos Marcello. He was a huge mobster, and I think was in a kind of battle with RFK. So it's a very small world. Like it's off the charts. Marcello's like spitting fire. I'm trying to find out where this hypnotism is. It's like, oh yeah. Here, according to the House Assassination Committee, Ferry spent considerable time studying medicine and psychology, especially the techniques of hypnosis, which he frequently practiced on his young associates. So there's a decent chance that Oswald was hypnotized and or made a hypnotic subject and or was one of Ferry's victims. And this is a pretty good picture of what Ferry looked like. And actually, one of the interesting things about Dave Ferry is Garrison himself said David Ferry was one of the most important people who ever lived. Like, he said an extraordinary statement about this weird character with a hat and a predilection for teen boys. Because Ferry knew all these people, mobsters, gun runners, Bay of Pigs, all kinds of stuff going on with Cuba. And he was a great pilot. He actually flew for like one of the big, like Western Air, like a big jumbo, jet with passenger airline. But let's get back to, it's just interesting that he's around there. But the hypnotism of there, that Oswald was around that. But the other people that he's around, Oswald is around, is an ex-white Russian by the name of, what was his name now? I can't remember. This, what is his name? Not Ruth Payne, but it's just, but George de Mohrenschildt is his name. Here's de Mohrenschildt. This is another suspicious character, but he's definitely friends with Oswald. Here's de Mohrenschildt. Totally tied into the network. De Mohrenschildt is friends with Jacqueline Kennedy in New York and also Oswald. Like, how small of a world does that have to be? Like, super, super small. And these are the kind of people who are exiled out of Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution. Oil man, but also around Oswald. And this guy suspiciously dies in the 70s once the investigations are taking place about JFK. So you had all these committees and stuff like that investigating. Was it the House HSCA or something like that, investigating a lot of these 60s assassinations that I've mentioned. And a lot of people died, like flat out, were murdered, found in 50-gallon, like Johnny Rosselli was found in a 50-gallon drum, I think in the Gulf of Mexico. This guy had his head blown off with a shotgun, supposedly committed suicide. I'm not buying it. But let's go back to, well, there's a really interesting book, and it's kind of lost to history. Now, if I can find it, I'll show it to you. But it's about Oswald's, when he went, it's a really interesting tie-in to the Manchurian Candidate, which we started off this talk with, because the Condon's book and the film took place right at the end of the 50s and early 60s. When Oswald is in Russia, he's in Minsk, but he's like in hospitals and doing weird stuff. And somehow he gets there and gets back out. He gets to go to Russia and then re-migrate back to the United States. And this book, I'm trying to figure out where I have it like referenced, but there's a really good book about him. George de Mohrenschildt actually wrote a book called Lee Harvey Oswald as I Knew Him. There's a lot of cover-up type stuff, but the book about Oswald is, I have it somewhere. It's in my Oswald collection, which I don't have on hand. But it literally makes the argument that Oswald was a mind control, one of the early mind control subjects, manipulated at Atsugi and handled all the way up until 1963 as a patsy. And that's what all these people were doing. Is the Ruth Payne, who also infamously like had Oswald and Marina at her house in Irving, Texas. So you can say Ruth Payne, de Mohrenschildt, Ferry, possibly Bannister. He's seen with Shaw. One of the elements of the Garrison investigation had somebody who witnessed Ferry, Shaw, Oswald, and Oswald at kind of an MK Ultra doctor. And at that time, around the early 60s in Tulane, there's a notorious MK Ultra doctor there, of one of many. You have to remember, the whole program was vast. It was like the project to create a nuclear bomb. It was like the Manhattan Project, where they farmed out things to different schools and universities and places and compartmentalized everything. So some guy would be working on this here, some guy would work on this project here. They had no idea about the thing because it's all centralized and stovepiped at the CIA. So like these guys wouldn't know. But the guy at Tulane, his specialty was implants, like literally implanting stuff into the brain. And if you read this book, there's a book about William Joseph Bryan that also argues that he was doing experiments with people who had radio frequencies implanted in their brain so that they could receive like radio frequencies, like super top secret stuff. And it's called, I can't remember the William Joseph Bryan ones. Anyway, so a lot of weird stuff is going on with Oswald, and his body was dug up and reburied and stuff, which is weird. But this book, it shows how strange his background was, and that there's clearly, I mean, we know now that that there was MK Ultra experiments happening at Atsugi, and there was LSD experiments. People were being dosed. Like, it's not even arguable. So it's one of the other things is like there are people around there. Oswald, there's like this Bro Shears guy who's a member of the Process Church. The Process Church was around New Orleans at that time. They actually moved their headquarters from Extool or Stool or whatever you call it in Yucatan to New Orleans. But yeah, this book is just absolutely incredible about Oswald. Let's see if I can find it. But what are the other things about Oswald that's strange? That they would sit him in front of a TV and he would just sit there and watch it. And also that he was sent to this movie theater where he almost got shot at this theater. There was a gun that went off. And so he almost like died at that theater. I think it was the Texas Theater that was kind of in southeast Dallas at the time. But it's just really strange what was going on around there. And also, like, there were also MK Ultra doctors around other people in the JFK assassination. So, for example, there was a guy, John Gittinger, who's kind of notorious as this guy who put together these personality tests. He was the doctor for the woman who said they were going to kill Kennedy before they killed Kennedy. Her name escapes me now, but she's featured in JFK. She's literally chucked out of a car, and she's like, they're going to kill Kennedy. And that her doctor's an MK Ultra doctor out of Oklahoma, which is where I think at the time Louis Jolyon West is from too. But it's crazy. It's really, I mean, I think that Oswald was handled. That's for sure. I really do. And he was handled from a very early age. The Hubertus like Strughold thing in Oswald, let me see if I can find it, is really remarkable. It's a remarkable element of, and it's all very well organized. So the other thing that connects Oswald at a very early age is, it's a kind of this operator of the FBI who seems to know Oswald at a very early age. His name is George White, and he was involved in the Midnight Climax kind of things that happened in San Francisco, where they would secretly drug people and film them with prostitutes and stuff like that. And Oswald was an ideal kind of candidate for a Manchurian candidate because no father, single mother, poor. And so it would make sense that he would, Oswald, that he would be like involved in this. He's just very, the guy's name was Hubertus Strughold. He did this thing like, is really crazy. I think he was actually, let's see, what was it? Okay, he wasn't connected to Hubertus Strughold. So I forgot the other guy's name. Oswald, early psych test. Renatus Hartogs was the guy's name. That was the guy's name who I found the thing right here. It wasn't Hubertus Strughold. It was Renat, a similar name. The guy's name is, this is from 53, guys. This is an intake psych examination. Psychiatrist from 53. about Oswald. And you could do research on this Renatus Hartogs guy. He shows up in weird places. So this is like 10 years before this. I think Oswald is still a teen here, like an early teen. But he's 13 years old. But this guy is a MK Ultra doctor. I don't know if you've heard this story, but like he's doing this, he's got him down. Probation officer, troubled. Yeah, but you can look into Renatus Hartog's psychiatrist. Oswald with a personality disturbance, passive aggressive tendencies from emotional deprivation. So he's needy. He needs a father figure. And that's probably why he was targeted, because he had all these other father figures around. DeMorenschild, Ferry, and then Ruth Payne there at the end. Ruth Payne's background is really interesting too, because there's like a family tie to like Eastern elites and the founder of MK Ultra himself, which is Dulles. Alan Dulles. The connection is Alan Dulles's girlfriend's mom was like Ruth Payne's mom, or so. No, Alan Dulles's girlfriend's friend was the mom of Ruth Payne, or something like that. Ruth Forbes Payne. But there's like connections going back to Alan Dulles. It's incredible. I wish I had that book at handy. I just didn't have it here, but it is really an incredible book about, okay, here's the one about, this is the one about, if you want to read Have a Bad Day, this is the one about William Joseph Bryan. It's called Project Artichoke. Zodiac was cover to silence witnesses from the RFK investigation. Totally noided. One of the most paranoid books ever written. But it has a lot about William Joseph Bryan if you want to read about it. But this guy, this is like supposedly a confessional. So this guy, it's not a very big book, but Sylvie was like dying. And he's like, this is what really happened. And one of the interesting things about the story is that he thinks that William Joseph Bryan hypnotized a pilot through post hypnotic training to literally crash his plane. Like the pilot crashed his plane close to where William Joseph Bryan was headquartered, like on the East Bay or something like that in Northern California. But this has all those covered. So what he thinks is that the Zodiac was actually like a psychological operation to cover up killing witnesses from RFK's assassination, which ties into kind of mind control, social engineering, all that stuff. It's really
so. Wait, are you saying that the Zodiac victims were tied to the JFK witnesses?
The RFK, 68.
RFK. Yeah. Were these all people who saw something who were killed, or was it one of the
first victims was associated? Sorry, one of the first victims had some connection to RFK. That's what his argument is. Wow. Yeah, it's really something else. Let me see. He has all this stuff about safe houses, the infamous polka dot dress girl. Just like, let me see. I've got some marks here. He has a Zodiac Order as a secret society. It is a strange book.
What's the name of the author again?
Sylvie, David M. Sylvie, Project Artichoke. Why this is like checking it out.
Yeah, Zoom does not want us to read that book.
Yeah, I guess not.
But I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it available. I'm going to make sure that there's actually a list of a bunch of the things that you cited and drew from in the course of the presentation. I'll make links in the description box for people who want to do more digging and homework.
Okay, this is a good picture of William Joseph Bryan. That's kind of like his 50s picture. He actually went into like this really dark 70s era kind of porn producer look. But this is kind of like his version of where there's like citations of him having inappropriate contact with some of his patients. And he infamously said, like, the way I get close to my patients is fornicate with them. So he was using this hypnotism to influence his romantic life, I guess I want to put it. I wouldn't say romantic, his sex life, I guess. Here's one of his books. This is Legal Aspects of Hypnosis. There's some kind of connection between the whites of the eyes and hypnotic trance. That's why it's featured here. But this is interesting too because his foreword is by Melvin Belli. And if you, like I mentioned Melvin Belli earlier, he's connected to Zodiac. He's connected to JFK, to Jack Ruby, to all these people. So there's this weird overlap between, and these guys went and learned these techniques from William Joseph Bryan. So F. Lee Bailey and Belli literally, when Bryan died, Belli was a pallbearer. That's how close he was to William Joseph Bryan. He was involved in all this stuff. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable stuff. I'm just trying to find this article about this plane flight that supposedly he was okay. It's Pacific Air flight. Let me see. I have it right here. Here's Bryan conducting his seminar. It kind of gives you an idea how big he was. But that's him. That's him in the background. Bryan conducting marathon seminar at Hollywood Beach Hotel. So he actually had offices right on Sunset Boulevard. So his offices, if you know where the Comedy Club is in LA, literally his office back in the day was like 2 blocks away from where the Comedy Club is. But really crazy stuff. Here he is. He was a pilot. This is him flying. I mean, he looks pretty. If you saw this, you would just think, oh, this is a normal guy. That's him on the bottom right. He would fly into Reno and stuff like that. But according to, okay, here's what the book looks like. This is Project Artichoke. You can take a screenshot of this, guys, if you want. That's the one about William Joseph Bryan. It has such a weird information that he literally caused like a plane flight to go down. It's off the charts. There was Pacific Airlines flight 773 was the name of the flight. And your transmitter is garbled, and then the plane went down. So it goes into like commands through the phone, right? Like there's all kinds of weird stuff going on with this. Like he did it as an experiment according to this Project Artichoke book. Let me see if I can find stuff about the flight. Here it is right here. I think it was a post-hypnotic suggestion because somebody had a gun. And he was headquartered in Reno. Like he spent time in Reno, William Joseph Bryan. But this crash, the board's final report on the accident, which all 3 crew members and 41 passengers died, listed the probable cause as the shooting of the captain and first officer by a passenger during the flight. The mid-air murder occurred May 7th. With Flight 773, a twin-engine F-27 prop jet was en route from Reno to San Francisco. The CAB report did not contain any new revelations, but this is the flight. Can't remember what day that's from, but that's in that book that I just showed. Project. Oh, here we go. So the book alleges that this happened because of a post-hypnotic suggestion on somebody, on one of Bryan's subjects. So you can take that with a grain of salt, but that's what he said. Yeah, William Joseph Bryan, interesting thing is the film Zodiac with, what's the actor's name? It's the guy who played Iron Man. He depicts
Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey, thank you. Robert Downey Jr. He depicts a guy named Paul Avery, and Paul Avery was involved in He was involved in researching both Patty Hearst, where there's tons of MK Ultra doctors, and F. Lee Bailey was her attorney, by the way. So they brought in like the hypnotist apprentice of William Joseph Bryan to be her attorney. You can't write this up. But Paul Avery was involved in Patty Hearst and Zodiac, but he was also a biographer of William Joseph Bryan. He understood that Bryan was involved, and also in Northern California, Bryan was involved in no good. If anybody could find Paul Avery's papers and where they are, I bet they are incredible because he covered Hearst and the Zodiac, which, you know, this is basically saying it's a total cover up, this book. That Zodiac is, there's elements of the Zodiac, which is the, you know, you want to talk about like social engineering and stuff. The fact that they never caught anybody and that it had the same effect in the Northern California area as kind of like the Sons of Sam, but like so many people were scared and freaked out about these deaths. Like the public impact was immense. And so there's some kind of component there, or some kind of like intent to engage in kind of psychological warfare.
Well, then you got the obsession around the ciphers too, right? So, and they only decrypted like one of the cipher letters in 2020, and it didn't really say very much, but it created this weird mass psychological obsession about this particular thing. And that's Cynthia and I were actually just watching a movie last night called Angel Heart. You ever see that one?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it takes place in
Right.
New Orleans of all places. Yeah.
Yeah, with Robert De Niro playing the devil, and his name is Cipher, right? Like Ludwig.
Lou Cipher, right? Dr. Lou Cipher.
Yeah, Lou Cipher. That's it. Yeah.
There's
But
a lot of
it has
kind of
lots
occult references in there too. I think there's a Crowley in there too, and
yeah. Well, there's an Edward Kelly is in there as one of the personalities, and yeah, it's a soldier who is a up and coming singer, kind of like a crooner, Frank Sinatra type, who sells his soul to the devil. But then something happens in the war in World War II, and he doesn't want to follow through on the contract, and does this terrible ritual with some random poor guy, and he sort of like takes the guy's personality and memories,
right,
and the guy's fragmented memories slowly come back like 15 years later in a terrible, just the worst way possible.
yeah, it's a scary movie. Lisa Bonet's in there. Wow. It's really interesting because her daughter directed a film called Blink Twice, which precedes the drop of the Epstein files, but it's really an Epstein Island story. And it's interesting because her dad and mom are kind of cultural aristocracy, I guess, Lenny Kravitz. And so he's around. There's pictures of him with P. Diddy, who had kind of like Epstein parties, and Trump. So their daughter made this film, which I think was kind of a revelation of the method, like amnesia and all this mind control and scopolamine, angel breath, which is what they use in Colombia to get people to remember, forget stuff. So their mind control themes are there and in the Epstein files for sure.
Do you want to shift gears into some Q&A with the audience?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah? Okay. First person I saw who got in there was Richard Moore.
Yeah, I have a comment and a request. The comment is about Marilyn Monroe. There's a book called The Fixer about the Hollywood detective Otosh. And Otosh had a recording going in Marilyn's room the night she died. And RFK was there. I forget the name of the other person. And she was screaming and shouting, and then suddenly she was quiet. Like they put a pillow over her head or something. So I just thought I'd give you that.
Yeah, that's a fake story. That's a fake story.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I ran into him. He's such a shady character. He made all this stuff up. There's no recording that's
okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Then the request is if there's time, and if you could say a little bit about Eyes Wide Shut, especially what I heard is there was like 40 minutes or something taken out of the film after they killed him. And I wonder if you could say anything about that. Thank you.
Yeah. Kubrick was pretty fastidious about having control over his films. So I don't know about this whole story. I've never found it proven. Maybe somebody else can, that there's stuff missing. I also don't think he was murdered. I think he was old. He was worn out. He had just done a year-long shoot. He was a smoker, so I don't think he was in the greatest of health. But Eyes Wide Shut, I think he was way ahead of the curve. I think he was known. I think that these things he was really kind of it's based on a film by, it's a book called Traum Novelle, or Dream Novel. But can't remember the author's name right now. It's not Kunstler, but something like that. He's an associate of Freud. But it was something that Kubrick wanted to make for like 30 years. But he was way ahead of the curve, and I think that it's interesting because it ties into Epstein, because one of the guys who's featured in the film was on Epstein's Lolita Express. There's actually a record of it. It's unbelievable. And he's actually he's a real journalist. So I'm trying to, let me see if I can find his name. But I think that it's an important film, and it's only improved over time. But there's all kinds of stars of Ishtar in that film, and there's also a star of Ishtar on Little St. James. So there's all kinds of tie-ins to these elite kind of secret society type situations. But I do think that he was way ahead of way ahead of his time, and I think that these guys were doing these kind of weird Eyes Wide Shut parties for sure. But let me see if I can find this guy who's what's his name? It's I don't have it on my Larry Salona was his name. There's a sequence here. This is actually a real guy, so it's interesting. So in Eyes Wide Shut, this girl who's like one of the ritual sex slaves or whatever, she dies, and it's posted as a hotel drug overdose, much like William Joseph Bryan, actually. But it's by Larry Salona. Larry Salona is a real guy. So this guy is real. His name is Larry Salona. But then he shows up on Epstein's plane. Like, you cannot write this. Let me see. This is actually from one of the Epstein files. Let's see. You can actually see the Epstein number here, which is the Bates number is EFTA 012-46931. And 1999, Larry Salona rides with Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and others on the Lolita Express from Teterboro to Palm Beach for a short weekend. He's literally like, this is when Eyes Wide Shut came out too. So how much did Kubrick know about Epstein through Salona? Maybe that was the inside nod, is that he put Larry Salona in there because Larry's hanging out with Epstein. So that's, I can do a whole show. I've done a 4-hour show on Eyes Wide Shut, all the secret meanings, the masks, the aristocratic stuff, the red theme of everything in there, who Alice is, the secret pedophilia, the pedophilia symbols that are all over throughout that, the secret society masks, Bob Hope. I mean, I could just, that's a whole nother show. I could do tons of stuff on the background.
There's actually, I'll just say one thing before I go to David, and I might ask you at some point down the line to do a presentation just on condensing your research on the Eyes Wide Shut thing, but on the issue of Frank Otash, which does kind of overlap with what you just said, is that he was also friends with Roman Polanski. He's a tabloid writer, like a Hollywood tabloid writer, and so he would farm out his private investigating skills to different tabloid hacks that wanted dirt on whoever, right? But he was friends with Roman Polanski, and Roman Polanski made Chinatown and had the character that Jack Nicholson plays modeled directly on Frank Otash.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So then on two levels, you got Stanley Kubrick being brought, like, overlapping as well from his friendship with Nicholson, and also his, I think he produced the Lolita movie too in 1962 that kind of started normalizing, or at least bringing it to the psyche, this weird pedophilic relationship and how that worked in. So anyway, there's just these weird, strange things. So just want to throw it in there. David, I know that you had a thought or two to share.
Howdy. Hey, what's up, William? That was great.
Hey, Dave. How are you?
Good.
Thanks.
It really has so many fun facts. There's so many, it's good that we stopped. If you went on for 10 hours, I mean, we'd not, that would be overload. My brain would be mush. Because yeah, so many things that could be investigated here. It just reminds me though, again, like the amount of amazing films and stories, right, that could be told with just this information that you're, bringing to the surface here. I mean, there could be like 10 amazing JFK films. You know what I mean? Like so many MK Ultra style films and stuff. It'd be so great. And I was just like, there's been a lot of hype around. I went to see the movie Obsession, which it was made on a budget of $750,000, and now it's grossed over $400 million. So it's like broken all the records. And yeah, I remember seeing a Manchurian Candidate, like a film like that. Yeah, I mean, you don't need a crazy budget to make something really groundbreaking and amazing like that, right? You don't really need, as long as you're not using like, it's not like some war scene in Troy where you need like 100,000 extras or something. There's so much potential, and it just makes me think there's gotta be some cool folks, some conspiracy theorists, who are down to actually, finance some cool films. And like it could actually be done. I could imagine some team assembled, right? Researchers, writers, and and like we could easily make some of like the most badass stuff out there, right? So yeah, I mean, Obsession is just a horror film and whatnot, but just seeing it and seeing, what kind of resources are required, and then like how far something like that can go, it's done well. I think that's just reminder that yeah, figuring out ways to make this kind of info and these stories more accessible to a wider audience. There's so much potential, and like these stories almost write themselves, right? There's just so much drama and mystery, right? So yeah, it's great. I really appreciate you bringing all this to our attention.
Thanks. Yeah, no, there is. The real stories are incredible. Like I've done 10 hours on Manchurian Candidate alone. You can check it out on I think it's just all on my either on my Patreon or it's on my podcast. You can listen to the audio of it, but it's the real story, the real history is real. These guys are all controlled, they're all handled. And that's really what's remarkable. Chapman, all even up into the present, like some of these other guys like Crooks and Ruth. But Chapman, Ray had this secret guy named Raoul who was following him around and gave him money. And then Oswald is he's not independent at all. He's just not independent at all.
All right. And Dave, yeah, you're qualifying yourself as a scriptwriter, so we're waiting for the scripts. And we'll see what we can do. Maybe AI can help us. You're Jean Sebastien.
Hi, everybody. You hear me?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. To follow up on what David said and give a little wink to Pee Roach, it's a band. Obsession is a possession, and I am indeed possessed. So here's the question. We've talked about the MK Ultra, and the title of the show was Occult Hollywood Masterclass. So here's the question. MK Ultra, do you think it's mainly done from an inside job to some people, like the killers, the candidate and everything? Or will there also be some technique used on us, the watchers? We see Cathy O'Brien, for example, as an MK Ultra victim, but maybe in fact we are the victim of that scam. Because if we can prove at one point that some of these storylines of the past were false, then why were they planted? They were there for us to be confused. So I think some Gladio operation or some agent from the past stay low, become vanguard, and can be reused later on. All this just to precise that I'm not taking this on the side that it is happening. Really, I'm thinking about the structure beneath it. You know, everything from Hollywood is télédiffusion, it's telecom, and telecom is military. So, as the pharmacants do, we give the poison and the medicine at the same time. So, how about the military use the MK Ultra also to gain some traction from the views, from putting all the mechanism of telediffusion to the maximum, bring the most of confusion, the bigger fog of war. And I hope some people around here probably have already read Michael Aquino's Mind War. It's a pretty good book. And it's on that book that I based what I'm telling you right now. So I'd like your opinion on the MK Ultra pushed on us instead of them.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that you can go back to the brain warfare speech that Alan Dulles gave on April 10th, 1953. And it was at the National Alumni Conference. I can bring that up. Let's see if I can bring it up. But it's an important speech for a lot of reasons because it was the kind of ideological predicate to the MK Ultra program. And it was, I think it was like before the formal, this is it, I can share the link too. It's from the CIA reading room. But what he says in here is really important. He calls it brain warfare, but he says the application of collective and individual programs. So he actually states that he wants to do something for collective reasoning, collective reasons. So I think when part of your question is like the individuals that have been tampered with, Kathy O'Brien, somebody else are answering. We're thinking about that, but Dulles is thinking on like collective, like, and we don't know what some of these programs are. This whole disclosure thing, global warming, global freezing, QAnon, just the application of TV. Even William Joseph Bryan said TV itself. You mentioned television. I'll bring up Joseph Bryan. He literally says it's a form of low-level hypnotism. Like when you see Bryan talk about that, you'll be like, "Oh man, I'm not getting on this." I'm trying to find the statement here where he talks about collective application of these ideas. But let me see if I can put this in the show notes.
Could you share this document in the chat box so
Yeah,
I can
I'm
get
trying
it?
to. I'm just
would be great.
Slow. Let's see. There it is right there.
Thanks.
Let me see if I can find this statement where he says collective. I think I have to download this first.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
but this is a watermark. Actually, there's a really good documentary. It's by the Dykes husband and wife, and it's called "The Battle for Men's Minds." It's taken right out of this document. Well, the minds of men. It's literally taken, like the title is taken out. It's about social engineering and control and stuff like that.
You said the Baphomet. Something I add to the MK on us, not on them, is that people like Bailey and HPB, Helena, and others, there's always military near them. You know, Helena, her husband was Oswald, if I recall. Erika Kirk, even now, her mother, Franze, is military. There's always some military near, and that's where I got the hunch about it's more about the telecom deployment and the money you can make around this than really the MK victim who is us, not them necessarily. Like in the Epstein file. Don't know if you read some guys on Substack named Johnny Vedmore.
Yeah, no, Johnny Vedmore.
You know Johnny? Okay, great. You know what he found about Maria Farmer?
No.
And Nicole Junkerman. Yeah, Junkerman, yes. He found that they were working with Epstein. So if the first victim in 1996 was working with Epstein and now is protected by some CIA near her, then she goes in the bucket of Cathy O'Brien. So Epstein could be a big cash maker. To me, Epstein made more money since he's dead than while he was alive.
I think the network is still active. Like the whole Trump administration
Yep.
is the Epstein network. Here's the quote that I wanted to get from this. No, I'm serious. Like all of Kushner, Glutnick, Trump, they're all heavily involved. Like you literally have somebody making arrangements about the war in Iran he's a platinum member of the Epstein network and Kushner, and making money too. The target of this war. The target of
Jean-Sébastien, just let William speak.
The target
please.
of this warfare is the minds of men, both on a collective and on an individual basis. So he's literally saying warfare on a collective. So it's important to think like that. Like, I think so.
There's just one last name I want people to know. It's Mary Spyatt. Mary Spyatt has been the coordinatress of Reagan, Epstein, and Trump over the 40 last years. Mary Spyatt, S-P-A-E-T-H. That's something that could be a great link to see the coordination of the Théâtron.
Well, you mentioned Mind War and stuff like that.
Yep.
I don't know if you know this, but the guy who literally wrote the book Mind War with Colonel Aquino is Paul Vallely, who is the he's literally on the board of Turning Point.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, this is the guy right here. He's making. This is literally a screenshot from Paul Vallely. And on the very bottom, advisory board member at Turning Point USA. This is literally the guy. He's making an occult secret society gesture right here, by the way. I have the secret knowledge. That's the gesture. And actually, this is like this is the sign of the square too. Like they square their arms. So he's on Turning Point. And I can find the cover of Mind War, and it's just like, there it is. His name's he was the primary writer. Aquino actually wrote it as an adjunct with Vallely. He was all over Fox News. So you want to talk about application of MK Ultra and some of these Mind War things. This guy's on Fox News all the time. Vallely is.
Oh, really? Thanks. That's a great angle that you just given me.
Let me see if I can bring up that cover of Mind War.
Right. On this issue, I'm gonna go to Monty, who has a question because it deals with the Roy Cohn network that I think really dovetails into this question really well, and then we'll go to Brett. Monty, are you there?
Yes, William, thank you very much. Do you have any opinion on the hypothesis that Trump is a subject and has been the subject of an MK Ultra program, particularly since his association with Roy Cohn, Operation Monarch? It appears just there seems to be a valid hypothesis. I would wonder if you would elaborate that. And also, as of June, Representative Luna of Florida is having hearings on MK Ultra in Congress, and one of the witnesses was Stephen Kinzer, who is the author of the book on Sidney Gottlieb, Poisoner in Chief, who gave testimony. And it's also interesting that what's coming out is Richard Helms ordered Sidney Gottlieb to destroy all the files, which he did on.
That's what he said he did. Like,
yeah. So your opinion on those? Your opinion?
Well, I don't think they destroyed anything. I think they probably just got rid of some stuff they wanted. They told the public they destroyed the files. Once they kind of come in the 70s, the focus was on them, so they had to come up with stuff. But I think this is still ongoing. I don't think there's any question about it. I think that the hearings are interesting because they're putting the ideas in front of the public mind, which I think is very worthwhile. And I would recommend both of those books that those guests had, which is Chaos and Poisoner in Chief. But whether Trump is a subject of mind control, I have no idea. He acts very strange. I think he's definitely a subject of an influence operation because he doesn't know how to get information himself. He relies on other people. And so I think that they're manipulating him into thinking they're trying to assassinate him, or Iran's trying to assassinate him, when it's actually other parties. But this is the old cover of Mind War, and there's Paul Vallely right there, Commander, above Aquino. It's with Michael Aquino, 1980. Sap to Minor Psychology of Victory. What's your information? I'm going to ask you a question. What information do you have that would indicate Trump is under some kind of program?
Well, just my observation, in particularly going back to Roy Cohn and his association with Roy Cohn and those networks, he seems to be playing out the same kind of a mindset that Roy Cohn, and it appears increasingly as his behavior is becoming ever more erratic. And it's almost like there's a breakdown phase and dementia setting up, and just his the erratic thing I'm witnessing of him right now, and the past close associations he's had with many such individuals, in particular Roy Cohn.
It's a great question. I wish I knew more about Cohn. I think the interesting tie-in is to Manchurian Candidate, that Eleanor Iceland was based on Roy Cohn, and actually Livia from the old Roman Empire, like Condon writes that. Livia was like the big like schemer who like poisoned people left and right. But I think his association is very thin. I mean, I think that he adapted Cohn's outlook on life. Blackmail. Roy Cohn was involved in like pedophilia blackmail, is my understanding, and this kind of never admit to anything and sue all the time, and like adjust and adapt your reality, almost like a magician. So I think that Trump had learned quite a bit in that regard from Cohn. But I wish I need to do some more research on Cohn myself. This is the book about. I don't think I mentioned this. This is a book about Oswald that says that he was like. This is not the guy's real. Lincoln Loris is a fake name. That's not a real person. But this is the one that argues for Oswald as a mind control asset. It's very well written. So I recommend those two books, Project Artichoke and this one, are both out there. But the more I research, the more I'm able to grasp the kind of ideas and facts in those two books.
So just quick question on when you were saying that the main character was based on Roy Cohn and the Manchurian Candidate. Did you mean the senator who's playing the McCarthyite? Like, no, who did
No,
you?
that's
who are you
McCarthy. It's Eleanor Iceland, the one played by
the
Angela
actual
Lansbury.
Angela.
Angela
Okay, that
Lansbury
makes
is based
sense.
on Roy Cohn. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
According
and Roy
to
Cohn,
Condon.
No, because Roy Cohn, yeah, he was the personal assistant to McCarthy.
McCarthy, right, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. So
And
he was
that's the kind
student.
of backdrop, right? Is the Korean War and the McCarthy hearings is the backdrop of Manchurian Candidate.
Right.
And the paranoia from that era, 50s paranoia, right? Not the 60s paranoia, not the current paranoia.
You know the connection, since we're on the topic of movies, the occult and all the stuff. You know the Devil's Advocate connection to Trump.
Wasn't it filmed in his building or something like that? Devil's Advocate.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, in his gilded apartment on Fifth Avenue.
Right.
That's
It's not
the house of because it's a construct. There's a composite character who is a Trump real estate billionaire magnate of New York who kills a child and a couple of people brutally, and it's Keanu Reeves, who is the son of the devil, Al Pacino, who's basically induced to sell his soul by becoming the advocate for the devil, and defend this guy. And that scene is all taking place in Trump actually volunteered to have his apartment to be the place where that would go down. And the entire thing has like a Babylon working ritual overlapping it, where Keanu Reeves is supposed to, according to Al Pacino's plan, finally mate with his sister and produce the Antichrist. So yeah, that for me was the most jarring piece of information, more so than a lot of the political disgusting stuff that I found pertaining to the Trump overlap connection with a lot of these nefarious Epstein networks. That for me bothered me more than all of the other stuff, actually.
Yeah, he's all over the Epstein files, like in a big bad way. On the subject of Trump, this is him in front of the Tesseract. He's literally showing off his occult knowledge here, because most of the public, this is like something you used to have to learn by being initiated. But watch this video. Watch this. This is incredible. And also stacking these like boxes is also kind of Masonic too. I don't know.
$5 each. Tell you what, I'll counter that offer.
So what he's showing in his door there is the square within the square. And in the occult, that's called a hypercube. And it really symbolizes the control of the person controlling somebody else. It's about control. And this is in, you want to talk about the occultism and Epstein. It's in Eyes Wide Shut. It's in, there's actually a square within a square in The Shining. And Kubrick knows it. And so does Polanski, which is really incredible. Like, you cannot believe this stuff. But so that's Trump in front of the square within the square. And then we'll go in, I'll show you some other ones. This is just a total riff. This is what the hypercube looks like. This is Mark Passio. He's an ex-Satanist. He's explaining what the hypercube is. This is a speech from 2016. The hypercube is one of the most occulted symbols within dark occultism. I think that's the redundant right there. It's supposed to be dark. Yet it is found prevalently throughout our society in the form of octagonal symbolism. The hypercube is a representative of a four-dimensional object. At 3 dimensions, it appears a cube within a cube. It represents never-ending prison, which perpetually renews itself, or in other words, hell. So, like, you can put people in there. This is incredible. This is literally a tesseract or cube within a cube at Epstein Island with girls in it. So they're like massaging each other. But look at the display on the ground there. And it's either a sonogram or some type of like skin thing going on there. But this is one of many tesseracts. Oh, here's an even better one. Here's a tesseract John Wick. This is from John Wick. Like, I see these things all the time. He's walking around cube within a cube. This is an important sequence from John Wick. He's walking around the cube within a cube. Here's some other much more. This is a bigger tell right here. This is literally a room on Little St. James. So you're literally on a carpet of cube within a cube. Like, you can't write this stuff. Here's another one. This is like the bathroom up to that room. This is Little St. James. Like, imagine like the kind of the shameful joy or whatever you get, like knowing their blackmail victim is like in these rooms, and they're totally unknown about all this stuff. But here's there's a sequence at about the 55-minute mark of Eyes Wide Shut. I know Eyes Wide Shut we've talked about, but it's a sequence where what's his name? Bill Harford is going down the stairs. He's going down there, and in the background, he's talking to somebody. In the background is Kubrick. And I think it's a really symbolic tell. Kubrick was so detail-oriented, but you see, if you watch the video of this sequence, you'll see him come down. That's the tesseract in the background. So he's descending into this never-ending hell in this downstairs area, and there's Kubrick. So I think Kubrick's telling you that he's kind of in hell. I think Kubrick's in hell, and also Bill is descending into hell. It's kind of a personal hell. And this, I think it's after the ritual sequence is this part. So that's the tesseract there. And then one of the other ones is really incredible, is the one from Rosemary's Baby, where, oh, here's another Trump with the tesseract. He's telling you he's initiated here. You can screenshot this if you want. You should screenshot all these. This isn't his front door. This is somewhere else. He loves gold and is like ego-driven, weird stuff, whatever. Let me see if I can find Rosemary's Baby's tesseract. They literally have her, like, the whole thing of Rosemary's Baby is that, like, a total occult film, right, with all these people. Polanski's involved. There's a huge satanic ritual murder of his wife. But the whole thing about Rosemary's Baby is that the Mia Farrow character is controlled from beginning to end. So it's almost like this weird occult thing of controlling and handling. And Guy is in on Rosemary's Baby from the get-go. So he's luring his girlfriend or wife into this whole thing. And that's the real subtext. When you watch it, you're like, wow. So she's not she's brought in. Once you realize it, it's like a mind opener because you realize that she's brought in to
Also,
become the mother
her
of
husband was already he already made
from
the deal to bring them in and set her up for this.
from the get-go. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah, so Guy is in on it that he is going to set her up to become the mother of the Antichrist. Okay,
Right.
let's see if I can find this. I think it's on my hard drive, but let me see if I can find it online. There's doorways and there's a pillow. She literally puts her head down on there's a pillow sequence where she literally puts her head down on the Tesseract. It's this, I wish I could find this picture. She lays her head down on the pillow. I don't have it at the ready, but it's let me see. I can hook in my files. Give me 1 sec. I'll find it. Give me a sec. I'll be right back.
It's a fine line. Where sometimes the square is really just a square. It's a design, a motif, and then other times it has meaning it's got to be kind of careful too deeply into this. Every time I see a square, of course, necessarily means that this restaurant I'm sitting in is run by cannibals. But it's useful to know that there are these charged images and meanings that are then used as part of the conduit for uh, control and influence over generations as well. It's basically an image you're thinking about of Mia Farrow with her head on a pillow that has the motif of the Tesseract on it. Because I think we'll all believe you at this point. You don't have to break your head over it.
I actually just reposted a 3-hour episode on Rosemary's Baby in my on my Patreon. You can check it out. We go through everything. I did with Sean McCann.
Yeah, send me a link to your Patreon account. And
There's
I'll
other
make sure
interesting
people...
things. Is God dead? There's also a book by Sammy Davis Jr. in there. It's really something else.
Really? Yeah, send me a link to your Patreon after this is over, and I'll make sure I include that in the description box. Do you have time for one more question? Or no, you're still looking. Okay, we'll let you look.
I can't believe I can't find this. She literally puts her head down into the Tesseract. Anyway, it's there. I can't seem to find it, guys. I apologize.
That's okay.
There's also some Tesseracts in the doorway in Rosemary's Baby, too.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of...
Anyway,
okay.
So the Tesseract is a really important kind of component of all like these secret symbols and stuff like that that are in these films. That there's one from AI too. There's like Tesseracts all over the place.
Yeah, I got to get you to do something at some point if you're okay with that. Maybe
This
on
is from AI
Spielberg.
right here.
Oh, the movie AI with Spielberg.
Let's see if I can get this.
Are you? Can you hear me, William?
This is the one that I think Kubrick was supposed to do, and then Spielberg took it. But they're in the kids' room. I think there's a carpet that has this square within a square, and they walk over it. So it's there. It's interesting.
Okay, so quickly,
I can't hear you.
William, yeah, you can't hear me. Okay, all right. Can other people hear me? Monty, can you hear me? Okay, so it's William can't hear. Okay, William, You got to fix your earbuds
Check
somehow.
1, 2.
Yeah, it sounds. No, it's everyone can hear me. It's just volume.
You muted everything?
No, he didn't mute anybody. It's his microphone, his headphones.
Check 1, 2.
Yeah, we can hear you. We
Do you
can.
have me on mute or am I on mute? Because I seem to be muted.
No,
I can't hear
you
anybody.
can't hear us.
Let's do this.
Yeah, I just saw he was muted 2 seconds ago. And maybe you hadn't muted, but you were just unmuted, Ramsey, like 2 seconds before.
Okay,
Yeah, unmuted.
Hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
How about now?
We can hear you. Can you hear us? I'm just,
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
now it's better. Yeah, I've just
Okay,
got
good.
you through my.
All right, good. I'm glad. All right, so let's maybe wrap it up with one last question from Brett, who's been waiting for a really long time to ask you questions. So Brett, go for it.
Hey Ramsey, thanks for waiting for me, by the way. Yeah, you just a trove of information you delivered this presentation. I'll definitely be re-watching it when it comes out, and also I plan to check out your platform as well. Among one of those things that you said that kind of made sense was you mentioned how people would in trauma-based mind control, the the motivation behind it is to get the person to disassociate from the body, so they're more prone to being programmed like an automaton. And I think that makes more sense than what I've heard some apologists say for these type of programs, where they say that people under abuse will tend to lean more on their psychical senses more, and that's why they abuse people, is to try and make them more psychic. But what you said made more sense to me, more plausible motivation for that method. I'd also like to speak to hypnotism and pilots, because I come from a background of pilots. I myself am certificated, and I have an uncle who was a great uncle who was a medevac pilot for the Bell 1 Huey in Vietnam. He tried to get hypnotized to deal with PTSD, and the hypnotist actually he kicked him out of his office. And my uncle, he said, "Hey, why?" And he said, "Because you're a pilot. Pilots are control freaks. I can't hypnotize you." So anything you want to say to that? And also, is there other professions that you think are more prone to hypnotism, personality types, than others?
100%. Like, according to my research, I'm no pro hypnotist, but there's a scale. You can actually type into Google like subject scale monitoring. They do tests on people to see how hypnotizable they are, and some people cannot be hypnotized. And so it's not, you have to find the right subject. Although William Joseph Bryan said through enough torture and enough drugs, he could hypnotize anybody. But so I do think that they look for the right subject. Sirhan had grown, he was literally a Palestinian who had grown up in like the hellscape of early Israel, where they were like, his whole family had to live in a church for like a decade. Or something like that. So he had a terrible childhood and he already dissociated. So he's a perfect example of somebody who, and also amnesia. The guy, when you talk to him, like he doesn't remember certain stuff. So I do think that my understanding is there is like a scale of that. There is a scale of like suggestibility. But one of the interesting things is I talked to John Hinckley Jr., the attempted assassin of Reagan. I literally had him on my show because he had a autobiography, and I was talking to him, and he had no idea about the past of his psychiatrist, who he's under the care of before he supposedly was the one who took the shots at Reagan. It would have benefited George Bush Sr. immensely, because it was like 2 months into his presidency. But Hinckley had no clue that his parents had gone into long-term litigation with Hinckley's own psychiatrist, who's super sketchy, in my opinion. I was like, no, I didn't know about that. He had no clue. So these amnesiac, some people have these things. Another thing is he drove across country to kill Reagan with a copy of Catcher in the Rye, too, much like Mark Chapman. He was reading Catcher in the Rye. Very strange. What?
Sorry, what was the psychiatrist's name? Do we know?
I do. I have it somewhere. It's in the book. Let me see.
Which book?
Yeah, there's a whole litigation. Like they sued him. His parents sued their psychiatrist, John Hinckley psychiatrist. It's in the record. And there's weird pictures of Hinckley and Chapman both with guns in their heads. Like, what are they trying to establish for the public, right? Like, why are they both making the symbol? I can pull it up for you right now. Like,
Matt has his hand over his face. Matt's like crashing out. You're doing a good job, William. Usually Matt can keep it together.
He was diagnosed. The doctor.
I was gonna add something while you're searching. Yeah, like Sergeant, when he's describing as well, one of the torture victims who was able to disassociate, he observed that he would like visualize mountains far away when he was just getting his ass totally kicked, in a Japanese jail, which, yeah, not a bad idea. I would, yeah, if ever I'm in that situation, I'm going to visualize mountains. But he had a histrionic personality, is what he observed. And that translates to pretty much, that's kind of what actors have as well, like in terms of their ability to be theatrical, take on different personas. And that's why they make for good MK Ultra programming targets as well, because they already have that personality type that, is attuned to just playing someone else. And their own personality, most of it isn't really that deep, that they have a special talent. They're a special kind of creature. But yeah, so the flip side is it's easy for them to disassociate, be other people, and, have multiple personalities or whatever. So there's definitely, yeah, I think it's like 5% are like super suggestible, then everyone's kind of normal, or I mean, like there's a different scale. But then even hypnosis, like as you said, with trauma and other things, like everyone can be hypnotized, relatively speaking, but it's all about, like, it depends what you want them, to do, or like, are they going to completely forget everything? There's definitely a scale for that kind of thing.
The doctor is Dr. John Hopper. That was his attorney. I mean, that was his psychiatrist at the time. And he was sued by, it was Brady v. Hopper. He wasn't sued by the parents. Excuse me, I was wrong. He was sued by the victims of Hinckley. It's not $14 million now. It was something because I think their cause of action was based upon what they thought, that he didn't do a job to identify Hinckley as dangerous. The interesting thing about Hinckley is he like developed this danger element very soon before the shooting. Like he had developed something, much like Chapman developed this interest in Lenin that didn't exist before. And these are all tells. For people who don't think that there are implants or things haven't been done, this is a famous experiment by Jose Delgado, who literally said about putting implants into people, he's like, well, experiments were done. He didn't elaborate it. This guy worked at freaking Yale. Like he was a high-level doctor, Delgado, but watch this.
Neurophysicist Dr. Jose Delgado was financed by the Office of Naval Research. In this experiment, the bull is sedated. Electrodes are implanted in its brain. Delgado transmits an electronic impulse to the center of the bull's brain. Delgado has remote control of the animal. Recently released CIA documents refer to the feasibility of remote control of animals, and that special investigations will be conducted toward the application of selected elements of these techniques to man.
Bam. So that was it.
Yeah, that's
anyway.
That's a big part of the film too. The Whitley Strieber book, Communion, that was turned into a movie with Christopher Walken. That was part of that story too. Is you got these implants, right? That the alien abductors who are actually wearing masks of the Greys that are abducting and anal probing Christopher or Whitley Strieber are implanting stuff in his skull that it's again very demonological and satanic, because it's kind of also acknowledged that these things are doing these rituals, but then he finds a way to love them, and then he ends up at the very end picking up the mask given to him because he knows that he has to pass on this gift to his kid. But these implants are sort of hovering over the thing, right?
Wow, interesting. Streeper has an interesting background too. I would say he has an occulted background. I would say it's interesting how many people involved in ufology are occultists.
Well, yeah, he was touring with the Process Church of Final Judgment for a few months when he had his fragment or his lost memories. He happened to be doing a documentary with the Process Church and has no idea how to connect those two weird things together. For him, he didn't make them align yet.
Surprise. Right.
Yeah.
Those guys were involved in a lot of stuff, and they're around certain events. They're around Manson. They're around like one of Ed Sanders' books. They actually got sued. He got sued by the Process Church and had to take a whole chapter out because of the litigation. Because he did a whole. I have that chapter about the Process Church by Sanders, but they're all. They were very sensitive at the time, actually. And actually, Bugliosi mentions the Process visiting Manson in jail in the number one selling crime book of all time, Helter Skelter. Wow. Don't ask me how I remember that. So there's a lot to talk about, guys.
Yeah. We can definitely do a marathon. I'm gonna have to ask you to come back on, man. This is really quite astounding, and I appreciate so much. I think everybody here, everyone stayed on. This rarely happens after nearly 2.5 hours. Every single person who was here at the beginning is still here, so that was very good. William, all of your books, you've written prolifically. Your channel is incredible. My mother and grandmother are watching the show right now, and they just testified in the comments section that this is incredible. People have to subscribe to your work. And again, your Patreon, people who are not yet, if you don't know about it, I didn't know about it, get the paid upgrade to the Patreon, get all of the extra material. I would love to get that secret chapter as well, or the suppressed chapter as a personal thing. Dave, did you want to throw out a last thought or question? I see your hand is still up before we round it out.
No, sorry. Lowering my hand.
Okay, cool.
Great
and
stuff.
Substack, Jean Sebastien is asking, are you on Substack?
I just started a Substack page, so you can check it out there. You can check out a lot of the things there. The book I recommend by Ed Sanders about the RFK, I will show it now. I actually found it. It's called Broken Glory. These are books that you can't really find in other places. They're hard to come by. But I recommend this one. It's visual. It's a graphic history. And it overplays a lot of stuff of Frankenheimer that we talked about today. I got a lot of good information. Broken Glory, Final Years of Robert F. Kennedy, fairly recent, just to kind of go over these books. Then the other one was Project Artichoke. Zodiac was the cover for Silencing Witnesses from the RFK Assassination. And then the other one was We Were Controlled by somebody who I don't know who he was, but his pen name was Larry Lawrence. Lincoln Lawrence, excuse me.
Okay. We're going to have links to all of those in the description box. I'm just noticing somebody wrote something in the chat. I just want to see if that's cold. Okay. I don't know what that means. Okay. All right.
Also,
thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Also, if you're like a visual learner like me, like I like pictures, I have 5 visual documentaries on some of the subjects I covered today on my Patreon. Occult Hollywood, the Smiley Face Killers Phenomenon, Crowley, and Children of the Beast. I did a 3-hour documentary on Crowley's influence on culture. And I know that was kind of like the theme that we came up with before we, talked about other subjects. So if people want to do that, like that's actually people like that book. Of all the books I've written, my best, at least my star rating on Amazon's for Children of the Beast. So people can check that out.
All right. All the links will be in the chat box, or not the chat, in the description box. Thank you so much, William. And thank you everybody for joining us this week, and looking forward to touching base with everybody again next Sunday, same time. All right. Bye, y'all.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.